Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to this fantastic event. I've been really excited about this. I know you all have too. So I'm going to introduce our fantastic guest speaker. Joe Bunting is a Wall Street Journal best-selling ghostwriter, a skilled novelist, and a devoted dad. He's the dynamic pen behind the real-life adventure set in Paris, which is called Crowdsourcing Paris, and the heartfelt short story Hands, as well as several insightful books on the writing process. As the founder of the Write Practice, an award-winning website and community, Joe has established a vibrant space for creative writers to learn, share, and grow. And that's part of what Joe will be speaking about today. So I'll hand it over to you, Joe.
Well, it's so fun to see everyone. It is unique for me to see everyone. Normally I do these as webinars, but it's cool to have this as a meeting and get to see some of your faces. And I saw Robert, who I know well, and some other folks in here. So nice to see everyone. Why don't we go ahead and check in? We'll just start right off the bat with some questions about book writing. We're talking about writing books today, right? And how to actually do it, how to finish your books. So maybe you can just check in, and you can either unmute yourself or say hi in the chat and let me know what questions or problems or concerns or fears do you have about the book writing process. We're going to do a little bit of a reverse Q&A. We'll answer some more questions at the end, but I would just love to hear, what questions are you bringing to this training as far as writing a book? Feel free to unmute yourself and say hi, or maybe in the chat if you're more comfortable with that. We can read your questions there, whatever you feel good with. Any questions that people are bringing to this book writing process? Let me know.
Hope you've got your hand up, so if you want to go.
Okay, my question is the order of everything to process from an idea to the end. You know, when to do a synopsis, when to do outlines, when to, so it's the whole process. How to do it quickly.
Yeah, that's good. The quick part is, you know, the trick, right? Writers aren't always the quickest in the world. That's a great question. We will definitely touch on that in this training. And if I don't touch on it enough, I've got a really great resource we just let out that will give you all the step-by-step things. So I can send that to you as well. Any other questions you're bringing to this training? I saw Linda in the chat. It's the whole imposter syndrome that's plaguing me. My story seems insignificant as I approach finishing the edit. Yeah, totally get that. And that's awesome that you're in the editing process, first of all, but we'll definitely talk about that. Gayla is agreeing with that. Who else has questions that you're bringing? Many people in the chat agreeing with imposter syndrome. Celeste says multiple attempts at an ending, and I'm still not happy. Thought I knew where I was going. Having a really hard time getting there. Third book in the series, and this is not a problem for the first two. Wow. So you're very experienced. Clearly, it's how it goes sometimes, right? Where just the ideas are not being helpful. We'll definitely touch on that. Brandy says, I feel that even in the beginning of the revision process, but now that it's almost done, I'm super excited. Just talking more about the imposter syndrome. Yeah, I totally get that. Laura says, when is it time to stop planning and start writing? I love that question, and we will definitely talk about that, Brandy. That's great. Thanks. Dawn says, how quickly after the climax does the story need to end? Super important question. We'll touch on that a little bit, and I got some more resources for you. Who here, and maybe this is a question that you're not feeling or not thinking explicitly, but is kind of in the back of your mind, who here is afraid that you'll never finish your book? Or maybe you've tried to write a book before and you've struggled. Anyone been there before or feeling that now? Few hands I see, thumbs up. Janet says, oh yeah. Sometimes even when you've finished a book, we can feel like that, right? Where we're not quite sure if we have it in us to do it again. And one of the things that I want to say is that if you are feeling like that right now, it's not your fault. I think we are not born knowing how to write a book. We're not born knowing how to write, right? We have to learn these things. Just as we learned how to write, how to read as kids, we have to learn how to write books. And it really is a process. It's a skill. So if you have struggled and maybe failed in the past, it's not your fault. You haven't learned the process, and that's okay. We're going to talk about that today. I'm going to answer a lot of these questions. Some of them I might not get to. We're going to have lots of time for Q&A at the end. So make sure to save your questions as we're going through. Let's just talk a little bit about what we're going to do today. So we're going to have some teaching time. That's going to last about an hour. All right. And then I'm going to share something really special that we're starting soon that you might want to participate. And then after that, we'll have our time of Q&A where we'll hear more from you and your questions. And then at the very end, I have a prize for everyone who's able to stay around to the end, a really great resource you can't get anywhere else. So that will be helpful in your book writing efforts as well. And I would just encourage you to be here with us, right? This is time that you could be writing your book, right? And instead you're here with me. And I want it to be the most useful thing for your book writing efforts, right? I don't want this to be another thing that you use to procrastinate writing your book. I want it to be really useful. The best thing that you can do in this hour or so. All right. So if you are able to like close your extra tabs, like put away your phone games, unless you need those to focus, I don't know. And just be here with us. All right. Sound good? All right. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. I've got some slides here. Hopefully that's showing up. Is that coming through, Shane? Great. Perfect. All right. Yeah. So this is called Finish Your Book, right? And also known as How Deliberate Practice Will Help You Beat Procrastination and Write a Book You Love. This is something practice is something we talk a lot about at The Right Practice. It's something we really care about. And we're going to talk about how it can be useful for you in your writing. All right. If we haven't met, my name's Joe Bunting. I've written more than a dozen books, including, as Shane said, a Wall Street Journal best-selling book. I wrote a book called Crowdsourcing Paris a couple of years ago. And I'm also the founder of The Right Practice, if you're familiar with that community. Okay. And one of the things that I've experienced as a writer and a coach is that I hear from a lot of people who have ideas for books, right? If you're here, you probably have an idea. Yes, everyone here has an idea. If you don't have an idea, that's okay. We can help you come up with ideas, but I'm assuming that most of you already have an idea for a book. And every day people will tell me about their book ideas. And then after they tell me, they get kind of quiet and they lean in and they ask me something like this: how do you do it? How do you actually write a book? And one thing I can tell that they're really asking is, can I really do this? Maybe so. Oh, there's a picture of my family. I forgot to show that slide. There's my dog Luna, my son Marston, my son Remy, my wife Talia, my daughter Shoshana. She's somewhere out there in the background. Hopefully we don't hear from her later. She's hasn't quite started school, but there's me. So yeah, maybe some of you are wondering this, like we talked about, can I really do this? You know, do I really have what it takes? Do I have the discipline? Do I really have, am I a good enough writer, you know, to actually do that? Because as we know, writing a book is a challenge. It might be one of the hardest challenges that you ever take on in your life, right? And it's a great challenge. It's an amazing thing, but it's hard. It's the climbing Mount Everest kind of challenge. It's the walking the Pacific Crest Trail kind of challenge. It's the eating a really ginormous hamburger kind of challenge. Now, personally, if I ate that hamburger, I would literally explode. Like, that is way too big for me. Maybe some people here could handle that challenge. For me, no. Goodness. But you get what I'm saying, right? Writing a book is a challenge. This is hard, you guys. And it's so fun. It's so exciting. It's worth it. Okay. And I just want to encourage you and say that you can do this. You can finish a book. You can write a great book. It's not going to be easy, but it's doable. So for me, the moment I realized that everyone can write a book was about 7 years ago. I was coaching this group of 20-somethings. They were on a gap year program, okay, in between high school and college, or like after college, something like that. And they were on this gap year program, and they were learning to be storytellers and writers. And I was their coach, okay? And I knew that one of the best ways to learn is by doing something. And so in this class, I challenged them to finish a book in about 12 weeks. Okay. It was a big thing. They had to finish writing a book in 12 weeks. And if you've ever met 20-somethings, all of these people were 20-somethings, you know that they struggle to finish things. Sometimes finish anything, right? Breakfast. They struggle with that too. And I was very skeptical that they could actually do it, that they could actually finish writing a book. And I had struggled, of course, not too long before that. And I had, failed at finishing a book a billion times. And it wasn't until I had a coach, a mentor, show me the process that I was able to finish. And I wanted to be that for them. And there was still this lingering question. How do you make sure you finish writing a book without fail? And so here's what I did. I created a 3-strike policy. Okay. They had to write a certain number of words every week. And if they didn't, they got 3 strikes. They would be kicked out of the program. Okay. It was a little intense. It was a little harsh. They were a little bit stressed about that situation because they knew if they didn't finish, they'd have to go home. And every week I would wait for someone to get a strike, for the moment that I would have to tell someone they had to go home. And the crazy thing is, it didn't happen. 100% of them finished their books. It was incredible. I had been teaching writing for years by that point, and I had never seen that kind of success rate. And it convinced me that anyone can do this. It's not about discipline. It's not about talent. It's about doing the work and having a process that helps you do it. Then they learned a process that changed their lives. A lot of them went on to continue to write, even went on to write and publish more books after that. And so I knew I was onto something, and I started a 100-day book, a program we have at The Right Practice to help people finish. Since then, we've helped thousands of people finish their books using that exact process that we're going to talk about today. Okay. And one of the things that I told that group at the very beginning, all right, the question that I asked them is this: are you going to commit to this process? Okay. Will you do it? Will you commit to finishing a book no matter what? And here's the thing. It's okay if the answer is no. Writing a book is really hard. You don't have to do this, you guys. You don't have to put yourself through this. right? It's not easy. So it's okay if you say no, but if it is something you do want to do, you need to make sure that you're committed, because it's going to take long hours, late nights, a lot of learning, a lot of work, right? Moments of overcoming self-doubt to do it. And I want to know from you if you're up for that. So in the chat, or like you can give me a thumbs up. I think there's like little thumbs up things, right? You can let me know if you're up for finishing your book, if you're ready to commit to that. Okay. Linda said, my husband wants to have me committed. Yeah, I totally get that. Whenever I'm writing a book, my wife is like, this is the worst. When is this over? Kayla says, yes. Eric, I'm up for it. Connie says, yes. Linda, thumbs up. Dawn, yes. Tiffany, absolutely. I love it. Yes, yes, yes. Sue says, very cool. All right, lots of thumbs up. Yes, been hanging on too long. Totally get that, yeah. All right, so in this training, I want to talk about two types of writers. All right, stuck writers and published authors. And I've heard from some of you already that you're stuck and you want to know how to get unstuck and how to actually finish your book. And for me, it took 10 years to go from failing stuck writer to finishing my book. And the thing that was different when I finally finished, between all those things, all those times where I failed, what was different was that I was finally practicing writing deliberately, okay? Before that, I was trying something called the spaghetti method. Has anyone here tried the spaghetti method or familiar with the spaghetti method? It's where you, yeah, that's right. I saw Brandy making the motion. It's where you just fling stuff against the wall, right? You get an idea for a book and you just start writing. And you just throw your ideas and your words and your dreams at the wall. And sometimes that works and those things stick. And it happens, you know, you finish. And a lot of times it doesn't work, right? Some of you here have experienced when it doesn't work. And you fail and you know, worry, is it me? Is there something wrong with me? Am I the problem here? Right? And you just end up more discouraged and more frustrated, questioning, do I have what it takes? And I did that for 10 years using the spaghetti method. It wasn't working. It wasn't until I discovered deliberate practice that it did. Okay. So what is deliberate practice? You're probably wondering, what does that word mean? All right. For practice to be deliberate, you need 5 things. Okay. 5 criteria for deliberate practice. First, you have to learn the theory. You have to learn the craft of writing a book. Sometimes that looks like reading. Sometimes it looks like studying great books. So doing your MFA, taking writing courses, things like that. You have to learn some of the theory, right? But unfortunately, it's not enough to just study. You actually also have to put that theory to practice. You have to do the work, right? And you have to have a process and methods to actually get your writing done. You need a coach, okay? You need a coach who can guide you through the process, who can give you pointers and kind of show you the way. You need feedback, okay, on what's working in your writing and what's not working. And finally, you need a team. We usually think of writing as this individual sport, right? Where we're on our own out in the world doing it on our own. But that's not true. The great writers throughout history have always had a team, have always had other people that were supporting and encouraging them. And you need that too. For me, I didn't luck into this process. I had a coach. And so today I want to do some coaching with you. All right. And we're going to talk about 3 secrets around this idea of deliberate practice that I've learned that have transformed my writing, the writing of so many people in our community, and that I think will be really helpful for you to help you finish your book. All right. Sound good? Should we get into the first one? Exactly, Brandy. Frankenstein. Yeah, she was besties with a lot of great writers. All right. So the first secret that published authors, that writers who finish their books know is this: you are a writer because you write. When I talk to people about these ideas, I hear things like this, and some of you already talked about some of these things, right? I'm not good enough. I'm not creative enough. I'm not a good enough writer. I'm not good at grammar. I'm not good at spelling. I'm not a genius like my favorite authors. Raise your hand if you've ever felt like that before. That you might, maybe not, I'm not sure I'm good enough or not. Yeah. Some thumbs up there, some hand raising, right? I've definitely felt like that before. So let me tell you a quick story of my first professional-ish writing job. So it was 2008. I had somehow talked my way into writing a news story for a local magazine, and it was really exciting. I thought, this is it. I'm going to get published in a magazine, finally going to get paid for my writing. This is a big deal for me, right? And there was, of course, just one problem. I had no idea how to write a news story. I was totally lost in the process. It was a big problem. And so I set out to figure out how to write one, right? And so here's what I did. I went and I found 5 of the best news stories that I could, and I read them and I studied them. And then as I was sitting down to write my article, I looked at those pieces and I asked questions like, how did they start this piece? How did they handle transitions? What do they do in the middle? How did they end the piece? Basically, how did they accomplish the things that I'm trying to do in my article? And those questions worked. That process worked. My article was published in the magazine. The editor loved it. He said, you can write for us whenever you want. It was a huge breakthrough for me. And the same thing happened when I was working on my first book. I had no idea how to write a book before. I never written a book, right? And so I got 4 or 5 other books that felt like what I was trying to do, and I studied them. And I wrote my book as I was studying those books. And that book turned out really well. It was published, it became an Amazon bestseller. So if you're worried your idea isn't good enough or not, or that you are not good enough as a writer, okay, what you need to do is you need, oh, and there's a little picture of me at many moons ago working for that magazine. All right. What you need to do is you need to study masterworks, all right? What I'm talking about is the process of using masterworks. Masterworks are books by other authors who are doing similar things to what you're trying to do, okay? Your job is to study them and to learn from them, all right? So think about your idea right now, your book idea, and think about 3 or so, 5 or so other books that are similar to the one you're trying to write. And I actually want you to write these down, okay? Write those titles down if you can. All right, so get out your paper or your phone note-taking app or whatever you have, right? And write down 3 or 5 books with that are similar to what you're doing, all right? And that would be good homework to find those books and to study them, all right? Now, some of you are here thinking, this is gonna take a long time and a lot of work to read all these books. Isn't that gonna take time away from my writing? And the answer is yes, of course it will. It does take time. There is a shortcut, all right? So there's a shortcut. I'm gonna tell you about the shortcut right now. The shortcut is structure. What structure is a way to think through thousands of masterworks at a time. It's a way to study masterworks at scale, all right? People have been telling, the idea with structure is that people have been telling in stories and sharing ideas for thousands of years. And as they've evolved, there have been patterns that have emerged, right? Structure is the method of identifying those patterns in great books and then using those patterns to work on your book, all right? Now, I actually wrote a whole book about structure. We could talk for hours and hours and hours about it, okay? So if you're interested in learning more, I can share that with you after. But in the meantime, I want to talk about one aspect right now of structure that can help you, all right? So who here is writing nonfiction? Any nonfiction writers? Give me a thumbs up. Shane is writing nonfiction. Anyone else writing nonfiction? Yes, no, maybe so. Just one or two, just a couple people. So I'll go through these nonfiction book types really quickly, and then I'll talk about, it seems like most people are writing stories. So I'll talk about stories right after. This is Fictionary. Obviously, you guys are writing stories. What was I thinking? Gosh. All right, I'm going to go through these super duper quick. All right, maybe we'll just skip it. There's 8 types of nonfiction books. If you're wondering, someday maybe you'll write nonfiction. First is how to self-help. All right, then there's investigative. Okay, investigative is still about principles and ideas often, but it's more asking questions. What's really going on here in this? Reference books, all right, are a type of nonfiction book. Inspirational how-to memoir, kind of in between memoir and self-help, right? There's a riff, Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott is an example of a riff. Stephen King's, all these writing books are riffs, right? Biography, of course, academic, and then memoir. Memoir is kind of its own category. All right, let's talk about types of stories, because I know that's what most of you are working on. I should have just gotten rid of that slide. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, types of stories, all right? And again, the idea here is that people have been telling stories for thousands of years, and they've kind of emerged into different patterns. Some people say there are 12 types of stories. Some people say 7. I say 9. I think I'm right, but you know, who knows? I think it's helpful though. All right, so let's talk about what's going on with these different types. The first type of story is adventure stories, all right? This is all about going out and finding something, usually a MacGuffin. Adventure stories are very MacGuffin driven, all right? They're going to find the thing that everyone's looking for, whether it's the kidnapped girl or the Ark of the Covenant or whatever, right? They're finding the thing, okay? And there are bad guys trying to stop them. You also have action stories, all right? Action stories are usually very villain driven, all right? Fighting the bad guy. Revenge plots are action stories, all right? A lot of superhero stories, action stories, so very villain driven. Next, you have horror, all right? And by the way, you can have horror stories that aren't in the horror genre, all right? None of these are based on genre. It's really about what's going on in the story. Okay, someone told me about a memoir they were working on about their experience with cancer that fit into the horror genre, and the monster was cancer, right? So all of these ideas transcend genre. Okay, that it's what's happening in the structure of the story. So don't let these fool you into thinking we're talking about genre. Next, you have thriller, okay? Thriller is kind of like mystery meets maybe horror or action, right? Usually it's very crime driven, but it's also some elements of horror or action. Then you have mystery, whodunit. There's a crime. We got to figure out what happened. We got to get the person to confess, okay? Love story, romance, self-explanatory, right? Performance or sports stories, all right? Every sports story is a performance story. Coming of age, all right? Coming of age is a type of story, and it can, you know, it's not about age, right? You could have a coming of age story about someone who is 70 years old, right? Who's entering a new phase of life, right? It's about becoming the best version of yourself. And then temptation stories, which are all about, you know, you want to do a bad thing. What happens, right? All right. So let me know in the chat, which type sounds right for you? What type of story are you writing? Okay. And by the way, as you're thinking about this, this might inform your the books that you study, your masterworks, right? Because you want to pick things that have similar plot types, right? So we had some action writers, action adventure, coming of age, thriller, action. Very cool. All right. All right, so if you want to go deeper down this, I know we just touched on this super duper briefly. I have a book that I wrote called The Right Structure. I'll put the link in the chat. You can learn all about all of these different plot types, more about what's really going on in the structure of stories. So there is the link to that in the chat. All right, love that. Very cool. So one of the things that I want to make sure we talk about here, all right, this is super important, you guys. Someone was kind of asking about it earlier, all right? Before I say that one thing though, if you are feeling like you're not a good enough writer, all right, or that you don't have ideas, or that your writing isn't good enough, that you're not a good storyteller, okay, you can get better, all right? You have resources. You can become a better writer by studying these things, okay? You have some resources. And one of the things, the really important thing that I need to say is that studying also can be a form of procrastination, right? Who here has used studying as a form of procrastination? Yeah, maybe some of you here right now are using studying as a form of procrastination. Someone in the chat is saying guilty. Tiffany, yeah. Eric, yeah. All right. What deliberate practice says is that you need to put that study to practice. All right. You need to do it. Okay. You need to do the work. It's not enough to read the books. It's not enough to learn about the structure. You have to do the work. I love this quote from George R.R. Martin. I think it's hilarious he ever said this, but he did. Ideas are useless. Execution is everything. Can you believe he actually said that? It's so great. But it's true, you guys. If you want to finish a great book, you can't just study. You have to execute. You have to put what you've learned to practice. That's the secret that published authors know. They know this. You're a writer, not because you're good, not because you're talented, not because you're a genius, but because you write, right? Because you do the work. So I want to hear from you in the chat. I want you to declare that you're a writer. It's not because you're good enough, right? It's not because you went to college to study writing or you got your MFA or you read every masterwork in your genre, but because you write, because you take that theory and you put it into practice. Always remember that when you are writing, you are a writer, all right? And don't let anyone tell you different. And especially don't let yourself tell you different, okay? You are a writer because you're doing it. You're doing the work. All right. Lots of people in the chat declaring that they are writers. Love it. All right. So stuck writers, they get lost on either side, right? They either never study or they procrastinate with studying. And you can't do that. You have to find the tension between those. You published authors study, and then they put it to practice. They do the work, okay? And it doesn't need to be perfect, right? But you do have to do the work. All right, second secret that published authors know that aspiring writers struggle with is this. This one's kind of controversial. Sometimes people don't like me when I say this one. The second secret is that the right amount of stress can be good. Published authors know how to use stress to accomplish their goals, okay? One of the myths that I hear from so many writers that I personally felt before I finished my first book is this. Maybe some of you have felt like this, or all of you. I don't know. I'm not disciplined enough. I'm not sure I have what it takes to finish a book. I can't write consistently. Okay. Who has felt like you're not disciplined enough here? Some people here are really disciplined. I can see it in your faces. You're like, this isn't me. But some of you here, yeah, you felt like I'm not disciplined enough. I felt like that, right? So when I was teaching that group of 20 somethings how to write a book, there was this one guy named Kevin. Kevin was a really great writer. He was probably the best writer in the group. You know how you don't have favorites, but sometimes you sort of have favorites. He was really good. And one week he got really busy. And instead of saying no to some other things in his life or being disciplined, he didn't finish his word count. And he came in all breezily about it, complaining about how he was so busy and how he'd catch up, blah, 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 blah. And so I brought him into a different room and I sat him down and I told him, listen, I know that this week was crazy for you and it doesn't matter. Professional writers, they get their writing done no matter what. So this is your first strike. And if you have 2 more, you'll be removed from this program. And honestly, you guys, he was so mad. He just like said, you don't understand how much I have going on in my life, how much I have on my plate. And I told him, look, this isn't personal, but you told me that you were going to do this, that you were going to accomplish your goals. And I need to help you do that. I need to hold you accountable to do that. And what was amazing about that is that after that, he got really focused. He didn't miss another deadline. And what was even more amazing is that not only did he finish that book, but he finished many books. He actually became a professional writer. He's now, making a living in part from his writing. It's amazing. And I think without that consequence, I'm not sure he would have done any of that. And so here's how we've helped thousands of people actually finish their book, okay? Before we begin, we help them do the work of creating accountability structures, all right? I've learned that from my own experience writing and failing to finish a book. Every time I finished a book, it was because I had some kind of accountability structure set up. And every time I didn't, was because I didn't have that, right? Every time I failed, it was because I didn't. This usually looks like, not always, but what this usually looks like, especially in our community, is a combination of deadlines and consequences, all right? Deadlines plus consequences. A lot of you here are familiar with the idea of deadlines, right? You would basically say, I'm going to write 5,000 words per week for, X number of weeks to finish my 80,000 word book, okay? So you have weekly deadlines and then kind of a final deadline. I'm going to finish my book by December 21st or something like that, right? But you also have to have consequences, all right? I still use that 3-strike policy. I still apply it to my own writing as well. And what I do is if I miss one weekly deadline, I give up something small, like ice cream, or watching TV, or my favorite phone game, right? And if I miss 3 weekly deadlines, or I don't finish my book, I have to do something really big, like give $1,000 to a charity I hate, right? Big thing. You don't want, the Society for the Euthanasia of Puppies to get your $1,000 check. But that works. You stay focused because of that, okay? You get it done, right? Because you don't want that bad thing to happen. What accountability structures do is that they create a little bit of stress, okay? And just to be clear, too much stress is not good. We're not talking about panic attacks here, okay? That is not useful for writing your book. No panic attacks, but a little bit of stress can be very useful to help you focus, to help you say no to things in your life that are also important, but you can't focus on right now because you're working on your book, right? It's kind of like the squeaky wheel gets the, how does that go? What's the cliche? The squeaky wheel gets the oil, grease, something. Goodness, I don't even know. But you know what I'm saying, right? If writing a book comes with consequences, if you don't hit it, you will focus on it, right? I loved in the chat, Crystal, I'm a psychotherapist and I preach just enough anxiety. Yeah, this works, right? I love this quote from Douglas Adams. He said, I love deadlines. I love the whooshing sound they make when they go by. The way that you make sure you actually hit your deadlines, that you accomplish your goal and finish your book is by creating the right amount of stress through accountability structures, okay? Stuck writers avoid stress. They think, I'm just going to live in my creative la la land and just enjoy the creative writing process. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to just breathe out inspiring words all the time. Published authors, they finish their books because they have accountability structures. All right. All right. The final secret that we're going to talk about that published authors know, that stuck writers don't, is that published authors have a practicing mindset, okay? One of the things that I hear from so many of us that I often feel myself is this: I'm too busy to write a book. I don't have enough time to finish writing a book. Anyone here busy? Yes? Lots of us are busy, probably too busy, right? And a book can just feel like one more thing in the midst of everything. I love this story about one of the authors in our community, JD Edwin. A few years ago, she started working on a book, not a few, like 8 or 9 years ago, and she let her creativity just lead her wherever it wanted to go. She didn't outline, she didn't have deadlines. She was just working on it and working on it for 5 years. When she finally just decided to publish it, to send it out into the world. And it was a complete flop. Today, she's so embarrassed by this book that she won't tell anyone the title or the pen name she wrote it under. It didn't work. And so she set out to practice, to learn to become a better writer. And a couple of years ago, she signed up for our course. She used it to finish her next book. This time, because she had a mindset of practice, she finished a draft in just 5 weeks. At the time, she had a more than 40-hour-a-week job, plus 2 small kids. And that book was published. It did great. It now has, I don't know, more than 171 reviews on Amazon. And she continued to use this process to finish her next book. That book was published. It's doing great. People said of the first book, it's a binge-worthy must-read. There's her second book, which has a few more reviews now. It's doing great, okay? And all of that was possible because she had a practicing mindset. When she was writing her first book, she was focused on making her book perfect, okay? It took her 5 years and it was a complete flop. And for her next book, she treated it as practice. It took her 5 weeks to finish one draft, and it was a success. Here's the thing about perfectionism. It is paralyzing, all right? You focus so much on trying to make your writing as good as the masterworks you're reading or as good as what you have in your head, and you get stuck. And what you need to do, you need to focus on your writing and even the book that you're writing right now as practice, as a way to become a better writer, to better understand your book and even yourself as a writer. And I talk to writers who are on their 3rd or 4th or 5th or 10th book who still struggle with this. I still struggle with this, okay? And I can still get stuck in the midst of perfectionism. We all can, right? But we need to do this daily. It takes battling with perfectionism daily if you want to finish your book and accomplish your writing goals. Okay, but if you do that, you're not only going to speed up, but it's going to help you become a better writer faster. So we have a really great resource that I'm going to send your way right now. I'll put it there in the chat. We're not going to talk about all of this page here, but there's a couple of things I want to point out that will be really useful to you as you battle perfectionism. I use this all the time in my daily writing, okay? So what I do is you can put your date and what date it is, where you're writing here, and you can put your word count goal, all right? How many words are you going to write that day? There's also this mood tracker that's fun, you know, just to log your mood, not because I particularly care about how you're feeling, but just as a reminder that you can write however you're feeling. If you're feeling like happy, you can write. If you're feeling sad, you can write. If you're feeling like death, you can still write on that day. And that's just a reminder to you, okay? So you put your word count goal, and here you can talk about, you know, what are you going to work on that day? What chapters are you going to work on with topics? And then you start the sprints. Is everyone here kind of familiar with sprints? Some people, yes, some people, no. Okay. So the idea is that you set your timer for a certain amount of time. You know, you might do 30 minutes or 10 minutes. Personally, I do 3-minute timers because I can't focus for longer than 3 minutes. So you set your timer and you write as much as you can during that timer. And then when the timer goes off, you write down how many words you wrote. All right. So if you wrote, you know, 150 words in your 3-minute timer, you write that down. And then what I do is I set my timer again and I see if I can beat my score because I'm very competitive and I want to see if I can beat my score. And so you can do that again and again. And what's amazing is that everyone can, you know, set a timer, right? That's not hard. It might be hard to write a chapter in your book, but you can set a 20-minute timer. And once you do that, you know, you've already started the process and you can just write and focus on getting as much writing done as possible. And then, you know, you see how it goes and you try to write more the next timer, right? I saw Brandy saying in the chat, you do 20-minute sprints on Sundays. That's amazing. I love that. We do host these as well at the Right Practice. And what it does is that it helps us defeat procrastination, right? It helps us focus on just writing, not worrying about, procrastination and perfectionism, right? Helps us not worry about whether it's good or not. Just getting the words on the page, right? Doing the work. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It just matters that you're doing the work, right? All right. One other thing on here that's really good is, you know, if you get any distractions, you can kind of reflect on that. You can reflect on what's went well, what you'll do differently. And if you hit your word count, you can give yourself a little check. Okay, so that should be helpful for you as you're battling perfectionism. And for me, what I found is that I can write about 1,000 words in 42 minutes, 14 3-minute timers, all right? And if you can write 1,000 words in 42 minutes over 100 days, that's a 100,000 word book, okay? In 70 hours, less than 1 hour a day, which is not that much time if you think about it. Most of us have an extra hour a day, right? To write, okay? That we can focus on our writing. But the trick is that it doesn't work if you're being perfectionistic. Stuck writers, they try to write the perfect book the first time, okay? And it doesn't work. Published authors, they approach every writing session like practice, like a chance to learn about your book, or to learn about your writing, or to learn about who you are as a writer. And the reality is that the book that you're working on right now, maybe this will stress you out or maybe it's freeing, okay? But the book you are working on right now, it's not going to be the best book you ever write. Okay. The next book that you write is going to be better, and the book after that is going to be better still, and the book after that, right? And the point of all of this is that just to continue to grow and to continue to become better. If you try to write the masterwork right now, it's only going to get you stuck. But if you focus on practice and becoming better, that's going to help you accomplish your writing goals. All right. So in the chat, just let me know if you're up for that, if you're ready to commit, not to being perfect, but just to have a practicing mindset. Is that useful for you? Are you ready to commit to having that practicing mindset? Let me know in the chat if that is true for you. I like that, Brandy. Dan Brown types in white text to not get distracted and to get the draft down. I would do that for some projects, and I would make it just real tiny. So I'd have to like lean in to actually read what I wrote. Brandy said, practice, practice, practice. Love it. Erica, yes. Practice makes progress. Love that, Crystal. I think that's really good. Tiffany, yep, let's do it. Very cool. All right, I know that we've covered a lot. Maybe you're feeling a little overwhelmed. Maybe you're not feeling overwhelmed. Maybe you're ready to go right now. But here's my question for you. Is it okay if I spend 5 or so minutes sharing a program that we created to help you actually implement deliberate practice and finish your book? I think it's normal to feel like just a little bit overwhelmed, like you're not quite sure how to apply this stuff on your own. And we created something that I think will really help, but I want to know if it's cool if I share it. Crystal says, sure. Great. Thank you, Crystal. Is that okay? Shane's giving me a nod. Erica says, go for it. Okay, so we have a program at the Right Practice. And we've talked about it a little bit already. It's called 100-Day Book. And it takes this concept that we've been talking about deliberate practice, and applies it to the book writing process. All right, so let me explain. Oh, here's what Kit said, who finished her book in this program. Kit said, 100-Day Book changed my writing life. I enrolled in this course not only to create a solid or write a solid first draft of my novel, but also to commit me to writing every day. I have developed the habit of writing. That's an invaluable win for me, worth far more than the cost of the course. I'll always be grateful. Giovanni said this has been the best way to get started on writing a book. There's a tremendous amount of information to help, especially for the novice. The encouragement has been authentic and inspiring. I would do this again. John, who has actually, I think, finished 4 books in this program now, which is crazy, said a transformational experience. The 100-Day Book Challenge drew me in, and through it, I completed a first draft. Then in the next 100-Day Book Challenge, I wrote another. I learned a lot, signed up for a 3rd session to edit a first draft and create a 2nd draft. This never would have happened without the well-designed and hosted experience. And I mentioned JD Edwin also, who finished 3 novels in this program now. And she has 2 books coming out soon. I think actually just 1 more, because 1 just was released. So here's how 100-Day Book works. In this program, you are going to develop a writing habit, okay? I think we all need to have a habit. We need a way to accomplish our goals. And through this program, you will do that. You'll become a better writer, all right? You'll feel more creative because you will actually be creating. You'll connect with the community of writers. And most of all, you'll finish your book, okay? And that's our commitment to you, is if you follow this process, you will finish a book. You will have a finished book by the end of it. So here's how it works. It starts with 100 writing lessons. So every day you'll get a daily lesson to help you focus on the project, to help you learn the craft of writing and be encouraged to do that. We also have something totally unique to, I think, any writing course in the world. We still have the 3-strike policy. So if you finish your book, all right, we will give you $100, all right, $100 back, which is pretty cool. And if you miss 3 deadlines, weekly deadlines, or you don't finish your book at the end, that $100 goes away, right? We want you to stay focused. We want you to feel incentivized to finish. And so that's something we do to help you stay focused and finish your book. You'll also have a book coach that you'll work with. You'll get email coaching from. Every week they'll check in with you. They'll hear what you're struggling with, what's going really well, and they'll encourage you in your writing. We have workshopping. So we talked about feedback and how important feedback is in your writing. You'll be able to share your writing in the community and get feedback on it and see what's working and what's not and how to make it better. 100-day book works for anyone who is working on a book. So if you're working on a first draft, it will work for you. If you're working on a second draft or a third draft even, and you need some accountability and structure and support, it will work. Okay. If you're working on nonfiction, fiction, memoir, it will work for all of those. All right. So here's what you get if you sign up. It starts with a 100-day book. The course, of course, you'll have a book coach that you're paired with as you go through the program. All right. You'll have feedback and a community. Having a community who can support you is so great, such a cool part of the process. So you'll have that as well. The Right Practice workshopping community, full access to that. And all of our writing classes. So we host a lot of writing classes at the Right Practice. We have the Right Structure, which we've talked a little bit about, nonfiction structure. We have a class on writing a children's book coming up next month. So you have access to all of those classes, okay? By this point, you might be wondering how much 100-day book costs. All right, it is not $2,990, don't worry. So the cost for 100-day book is $99 a month. All right. That's the cost for all of those things. All right. And one thing that we've talked a lot about is about deliberate practice. And like we said, there are 5 criteria for deliberate practice. And we've tried to incorporate all of those into 100-day book. So you will learn the theory of writing. We have classes, lessons to help you learn the theory of how to become a better writer. You also do the work. You'll put that theory to practice, right? To write your book. You'll have a coach who can walk alongside of you and show you the process and hold you accountable. You'll get feedback on your writing, and you'll have a team. All right. You'll have a team who can support and encourage you. We also have something called the Finish Your Book Guarantee. So if you follow this process, you do everything we say, and you don't finish your book, we will fully refund your entire fee. We believe in this program. We know that it works. And if by some crazy chance it doesn't work for you, we will make it right. Okay. So that's the Finish Your Book Guarantee. One last thing is if you sign up today, like on this training, we'll give you a copy of our planner, of our Right Plan Planner. This is a really useful tool that will kind of walk through the process, a physical book that will walk through the process with you as you go. All right, and that's what it looks like. All right, so that's 100-day book. Thanks for letting me share a little bit about that. We'll put the link there in the chat if you're ready to sign up for that and finish your book with us. Our next semester is starting up in just a little bit, so it'll be a great experience for you to finish your book in that program with the community and with the team and support. We're going to go into our time of Q&A now. So if you have questions, you can put those in the chat or get ready to unmute yourself if you want to do that. We'll have lots of time for Q&A. And then after that, we'll have a free prize. So if you're able to stick around through the Q&A, you'll get that. Let me put the link here in the chat for 100-day book. All right, there it is. You can sign up for it there. And when you sign up, you get a planner. So that's cool. All right, who has questions about writing a book, stuff we didn't cover in the training? Anything else you want to hear about? We covered everything. Jean asks, how do you know when your book is done? Yeah, really important question. So I think, one truth about writers is that you never really feel like your book is done. And most artists, I think, feel that way. Michelangelo once said, or was it Da Vinci? Some famous Renaissance painter said, art is never finished, only abandoned, right? And I think that's true. We always feel like there's more to do on our writing, and there are times when we have to let it go and sink or swim, right? And send it out into the world. Writers don't write for ourselves. We write for others. We write for readers. And so it's important to be sharing our work with the world. So I think it's important to get feedback on your writing. It's important to have, an editor or a coach or beta readers or all of those, right? Who can give you feedback and help you find the right time to send it out into the world. And sometimes you just have to do it and move on to the next process, because again, this takes repetition. And the next book that you write is going to be better than the one that you're working on now. So, sometimes you have to stop tinkering. You just have to send it out. Okay. Any other questions? And if anyone wants to unmute yourself, you're welcome to do that. Questions about the writing process. There are a couple of questions that I know we sort of touched on, that we talked about a little bit at the beginning. Someone, Celeste, was saying multiple attempts at an ending, still not happy, right? And even as an experienced author, right, it still can be challenging to find the ending. And what I would say is, first of all, it sounds like even when it's your third book, like, we still have to approach it with a practicing mindset, right? We can be perfectionistic no matter when, right? I've written 12 plus books and I still get perfectionistic about it. And there's a chance that you're being a little perfectionistic about this and that you just need to try things, right? Sometimes just by stepping into it, you can figure it out. Now, of course, studying masterworks is important. Studying book structure is important, and they might give you ideas as well. But I think in the midst of all of that, it's still important to just have a practicing mindset, try things, and see how it goes, right? And you can make it better. Yeah. Let's see, any other questions from the beginning? Did you see any questions that I'm missing, Shane?
Check. I think got most of them. Let's have a look.
Don had a question: how quickly after the climax does the story need to end?
Yeah.
What I've found and what we teach through the right structure is that the denouement, which is that kind of ending piece, it's usually just one scene. Okay. One scene. Speaking of which, I was just watching Hijack. I don't know if anyone's seen that show. And my wife and I were talking about how great the show is and how sad the ending was, because it was like the climax of the whole thing. And then they have like 1 second of denouement. It was so annoying. So yeah, just one scene, but you do have to write that scene. You can't just end on a climax. But usually that's enough to wrap things up. And if you study things, even like Romeo and Juliet, has a one scene denouement, right? And usually that's enough. Sometimes there's two, especially in a series when you want to open up a hook for the next book. They'll put in a second denouement scene, but usually one is fine. And by the way, this is kind of interesting, something we talk about in the right structure, is that usually the denouement scene is the climax of the subplot. So if you have a subplot, and a lot of subplots are love stories, right? Usually the denouement scene is the climax of the subplot, which is often just like the couple kissing at the end, and then we fade into sunset or leaving, right? Depending on how that relationship goes. All right. Anything else, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, Laura had the question at the start about when to stop planning and start writing, and this is something I really struggle with as a plotter. So if you could speak to that a bit more, Joe, that would be great.
Yeah. I think it's really important when you enter the planning process, actually before you enter the planning process, before you start outlining, to set a deadline, okay? We talked about deadlines and consequences. Set a deadline, create a consequence, all right, before you start outlining. And then you got to do it, right? You got to hit that deadline. And then you only have as much time for planning as you have, okay? But you just do the work and you get it done. All right. What people do is that they start planning and they want to wait to set a deadline to really get started when they feel ready. But you guys are never going to feel ready. You're never going to feel ready to write a book. It's too hard. Okay. So you set a deadline. If people are climbing Mount Everest, they book tickets, right? And you got to book your ticket to write your book with the day you start climbing. And then you work backward from there, okay? Sue says, I struggle with distractions. How do I focus? I've never felt comfortable with telling everyone that I can help, that I can't help them or do what they want when I'm writing. And I feel guilty. So I stop and go help. I totally get that. Yeah, it can feel like it's indulgent to focus on your writing, right? So I totally get that feeling of feeling guilty as a writing coach. Most of the time I feel like I should be helping other people with their writing and not working on my own books. So for sure, Sue. And what I would say is this is where having a consequence can be really helpful, because one, it forces you to prioritize, right? And then if someone asks you to do something, you just say, hey, I've got to do this, otherwise this bad thing happens, right? So it's like your ultimate excuse. If you have to give $1,000 check to the Society for the Euthanasia of Puppies, and you tell your friend that, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, you got to go write your book, right? And that helps you create a team. And I would explain that to the people, your consequence, to the people that you care about who are in your life, your family and friends. Tell them, like, post it on social media, that you're doing this. So make it a public thing. And that's a way to plant your flag into the, what would it be? The land, I don't know, of writing a book. Plant your flag into something, I don't know. I'm struggling with cliches today, goodness. And kind of declare to the world that you're going to do this, but it's also a way to start building a team with the people around you, so that they know and they can support you. And if they aren't supporting you, then I think that maybe says something, right? And maybe you need to have more friends who are writers, and building those relationships with people who get it and who get the process and can hold you accountable and encourage you. I think peer pressure, it works both ways, right? Peer pressure can work really badly and can make you make bad decisions and be people pleasing, right? And when your peers are doing amazing things and they're finishing books and publishing them and encouraging you to do the same, you know, that's going to be so motivating for you to follow as well. All right. So build those relationships with writers, get a coach, join something like 100-Day Book. You know, you're part of the Fictionary community. All of these things help, right? To work against it in the other way. All right. Erica says if Joe doesn't write his book, he will have to pay $1,000 and lots of puppies will die. That is a good blurb. I like that.
Celeste had a question about the course. She said, if I sign up today, can I start at a later date? I'm not procrastinating. I'm just putting publication of written books before writing the next book.
Yeah, I totally get that, Celeste. Yeah, so we start this program 3 times a year. This is our fall semester that begins, it doesn't begin today, okay? It begins, so if you did this semester, it would begin, this is a dangerous thing for me to be looking up on while I'm live, in fall, in September, maybe on September 11th, that is correct. So day 1 is September 11th. So if now is not the right time for you, then that's perfect because we're not starting for a month. Okay, so you have time to prep, right? And if September and the fall doesn't work for you because you're focused on other things, we teach it 3 times a year. You could join and we could put pause on your payments. Just send us a note and then we can move you to a future semester if that works. Just send us a note if you want to do that. Okay, and that way you get the planner as well. Crystal's saying in the chat, I personally create a transition boundary when it's kind of important for my attention. I put a sprint for a few minutes, and I just say come back in 30 minutes. Yeah, that's good. I like that. Yeah, I mean, I think there's timers are amazing things, and you all have one on your phone. And it's easy to navigate to, right? But just by starting a timer and starting it for your writing, starting it for your procrastination, all of that works. I think that's really smart. Any other last questions, you guys? Let me know if you do or if I'm missing something. You guys are awesome. This is super fun. Just looking back to make sure we got all the ones. We did cover imposter syndrome, right? No one's feeling like an imposter anymore. Everyone feels like a real writer. I mean, we all feel like imposters sometimes, right? I certainly do. And it, you know, it's a feeling, and you can write anyway. You know, you can do the work anyway. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to Fictionary. Thanks to Shane for hosting me. Shane, you're doing 100-Day Book right now. How's it going?
I am doing 100-Day Book right now. It's going well. I do find the consequence piece is a good thing. I never thought I'd say that, but it is a good thing because it forces you to get the work done. It forces you to write the book. And I mean, even as someone, you were saying, Joe, about more experienced authors, I've written a few books now and it can still be hard to find the motivation to do the thing. So consequences are the way forward, I think. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You know, there's other ways to do accountability. It's just one way to do it and it works. And most published authors have some kind of consequence. You know, I'm working with a client right now who just signed a publishing deal, and that's a real consequence. When you have to finish your book, otherwise you have to pay the advance back. That is a real consequence. And professional writers deal with these kinds of things all the time. And you can create your own, right? You can create your own accountability structures as well. Okay. All right, everyone, I'm going to run. Thank you so much. I hope this was useful. Let me just close with something of a creative blessing for your book and your writing time. May you enjoy your writing. May it be fun and inspiring every day. And even when it isn't, may it bring your life deep meaning. And most of all, may you finish your books. Thanks so much, everyone. Super fun to be with you. Good luck, happy writing, and we'll see you soon.